Hey y'all, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to check out another one of my videos. And today I'm super excited to be sharing with you this video today because I'm bringing you guys 3 looks plus my official review for the new Natasha Denona Circo Loco palette. Now this is one of the first palettes that I purchased from Natasha Denona. It's technically my second palette that I've tried from her, but the first time I actually spent the money on her. The other one I got in a boxy time. And I am someone who is not into luxury makeup and definitely isn't someone who tends to spend a lot of money when it comes to palettes because I feel like you can get so many great ones at a more affordable price, keeping it under $100. So spending well over $100 just kind of hurt a little bit, but I've always wanted to try Natasha Denona. I feel like they are just so highly talked about. Their formula is just so amazing, but her color stories never really intrigued me until she came out with this palette, which is the Circo Loco palette, and the color story was like, yeah, I could get down with that. I love the creativity. I love the variety of color in here. I just felt like every time I looked at this, I could see different combinations. And at this point of me filming this video, I think I've done at least 7, I believe it's 8 eye looks in total with this palette. You guys are going to see all of them in my next Palette Palooza review where I insert all of the eye looks that I've done with the palettes, but today we're just going to focus on the 3 that I did for the tutorial. But I've done a lot of looks with this, and still when I look at this, I could see other looks that I could do with this palette that I hadn't done, and just different color combinations that I could pair together to get something totally different, and I absolutely love that about a palette. So the color story was definitely up my alley, and I wanted to pick it up, so I did. I've already done a video with this. If you are curious, I did 2 looks with this when it first came, and I actually duped it with Juvia's Place palettes and then also an Anastasia Beverly Hills palette. So if you want to see that, want to see more affordable options to get the same color story, check that video. I'll have it linked up here and also down in the description box. But today we're going to be talking about my review for this palette. Is it worth the money? Am I glad I have it? Would I recommend it? All that sort of thing. But before we get into the nitty gritty with this palette, I want to go ahead and share with you guys the 3 looks that I created for this video today, just to give you guys some inspiration, maybe if you have the palette already, or if you're curious about the palette and contemplating it, to give you some idea of the type of looks that I was able to get with this palette. So with that said, let's go ahead and jump into the tutorials, and then we'll meet back here to discuss more in depth my thoughts and opinions on this, as well as swatching it live on camera for you guys.
Alright, so starting off with this look, per usual, if I remember any of the other products that I use with these eye looks, I always link them down below in the comments if you're curious. But I'm just taking Firework and I am blending that up into my crease, and I'm just spending some time building it up, and I thought I got the color pigmentation and payoff really quickly here. Once I liked how that looked, I went ahead and took Joker, and I'm putting that right into my crease to deepen up the orange. I want to add some definition and just more depth in the crease. So I'm blending this in and just working to mesh the 2 together until I like how it looks. This shade also was very pigmented. I feel like it built up and blended into the orange really nice and seamlessly, and overall really happy with how it was performing in this eye look. Moving on, I dipped into Magic, and I'm packing this on my outer corner there and just taking a little bit of time to build it up. This shade is, while it's nicely pigmented and I don't think it's like a faulty shadow, it is more of a light, almost muted type of shadow, so I did notice that I had to spend a little bit of time to build up the color that I wanted, or the intensity of the color that I wanted. So that's what you're going to see me do here, but I do think it builds on top of itself really nicely, and I did get the amount of intensity in the purple that I was looking for. At this point, I kind of just went back and forth with all of the colors and spent some time blending until I like how the blend looks, because I like to have a nice seamless blend from the purple to the pink to the orange. And all things considered, I thought I got the blend that I was looking for fairly quickly and fairly easily, so overall I was very happy with all 3 of those shadows blending together. Moving on to my eyelid, I went ahead and put on Razzle Dazzle all over the lid and left just the inner corner alone. This is a really pretty shade. It's a gorgeous shimmer with a lot of sparkle reflect to it. The shadow itself is a bit of a darker color, which I feel like I don't tend to gravitate for, but this amount of sparkle in it is very pretty, and it's a nice and opaque shadow. Once that was down, I did go ahead and take Grin, and I'm putting that in the inner half. I'm not taking this too far across my lid. I just want to kind of brighten up the inner corner and blend it into that Razzle Dazzle shadow. This Grin is a little bit thin, like the shadow itself is a little bit more translucent, but however, as I was packing it on, I definitely could get it to be more pigmented and give me the intensity I was wanting, so I was very happy with this shadow as well. I thought it performed really nice and overall meshed with Razzle Dazzle really nicely. And then just to kind of help that blend from the Razzle Dazzle to the matte purple, I went ahead and took Act and just packed it right there at that point where the 2 meet there, just to help with that blend and get a very diffused and effortless blend from the shimmer to the matte. And I really liked how that looked. And then for the lower lash line, I'm just going in with Magic, and I'm smudging that right against my lower lash line, staying really close because I didn't want to make it too dark down there. And then after that, I took a little bit of that first shade Firework, and I'm buffing that in, focusing mostly on the inner portion to really make it stand out, but then I'm also using it to blend out the purple underneath there that we just put down. And then for the inner corner, I decided to use Aerialist to highlight my inner corner, and this goes on really nice. Aerialist is definitely more of a sheer shadow. It definitely would make a beautiful topper if that's what you like, but for me and what I like in an eye look, it performed beautifully as an inner corner highlight. And then you're just gonna see me here kind of retouching all the little shadows and just making sure I like how it looked. And that was the look. I really enjoyed how this look turned out. Orange and purple is a very pretty combo that I enjoy using, and I really like the mix of colors and how all the shades blended. All the mattes just work so beautifully together in this eye look, as well as the shimmers. I thought they were very easy to work with, and they went on, and I like the amount of shimmer reflect and just like, oh, not glitteriness, but it has a lot of sparkle to it when you're turning your head, and especially you can see it more so in person. And overall, like, the wear time of this also was really nice. I get a tiny bit of transfer up into my crease, but not bad. Moving on to the second look, I wanted to go very pastelish, so I took that shade Fun to Meme, I believe is how you pronounce it. I'm packing that on the inner half of my crease, and as you can see, I feel like the shade has a lot of, like, it has a lot of pigment to it. It's a very nice shadow. However, it's such a light shadow that it just kind of gets lost in my skin tone, and I don't know if this is just a skin tone thing. Maybe it would show up better for a different skin tone, but that was my struggle and why I spent so much time building it up, because I felt like I couldn't see it well enough. But anyway, at some point I kind of, left it as it was, and I went on to Magic, and I'm packing it on the outer corner. I was going for a pastel look, so I'm going very lightly with this purple and blending it into the blue, and I thought it worked really nicely. In the previous look, I was really trying to pack it on and get intensity, and in this look, I was going more for a sheer wash of color because, like I said, I was going for pastel, so I was really happy with the outcome that I was able to get with the purple. Next up, I wanted to take a little bit of cotton candy and use this to kind of be the blending point and blend out the purple, but as you can see, like, I struggled to even see it on my skin. Like, I kept going back and forth, and finally I was just kind of like done trying, so I touched just the teeniest bit into Joker, and I used this to blend it over the purple, and it was almost instantaneous. Obviously I didn't have to use much, but it just showed up so much quicker, so I ended up just going with Joker, and it was a lot easier than cotton candy. Moving on to the lid, I went ahead and took Razzle Dazzle. Once again, I really enjoyed using this shadow apparently, but I am putting this all over my lid, and I didn't want it to be that bright because it is a beautiful, very bright and pigmented shadow. So once I had it all smoothed over, again, a very nice and smooth shadow, like, it goes on very pigmentedly. There's no kind of patchiness, there's no weirdness in applying it to my lid. I'm very happy with the quality of the shimmers. But once that was done, I went ahead and dipped into Aerialist, and I'm using that to put it over Razzle Dazzle, and this gave the most beautiful kind of like pastel pinky look to the eye look, and really kind of grounded and rounded out my pastel look that I was trying to create here. So I was really happy with how those two worked together. After that was over, I just touched a little bit more of the purple just to kind of mesh and blend where the shimmer meets the matte, and then I'm moving to my lower lash line, which I'm just taking a little bit more of that purple and packing it on there with a more dense brush. I tried a fluffy one, but then I ended up switching to a denser brush. But anyway, moving on to the inner part of my lower lash line, I'm taking Joker and packing this on and blending that into the purple and just using that to diffuse the purple once again. This is something that I tend to do and enjoy doing for my lower lash line, and just kind of round it out and kind of meet it up with what I had going on in my crease. And then for my inner corner, I decided to take a little bit of that snow cone, and I spritzed it just to get a little bit more intensity. Snow cone is a beautiful shadow, a little bit more pigmented than Aerialist and a little bit more of a pop, so it just completed the look perfectly. And yeah, this is the finished look. I really like how it turned out, but still, like, I mean, it's pastel, so I understand that it's a very pastel look, but you guys know me, I like to go for very colorful and punchy pastels, so I was a little disappointed in how like light that inner corner shade is. So I wouldn't have mind if they had a little bit more color to them, but overall it was a very pretty look. They meshed together beautifully and they held up well all day. So overall, really pretty pastel look. Moving on to the third and final look, I took Firework once again. I know I took this once again. I tried not to do the same technique twice, and obviously I failed miserably in this look, but I wanted to do try for a full cut crease, and so I really wanted to use the orange again, and so I used it again. But this time I kind of focused on building up the orange, because I feel like in the first look I kind of just went for a wash of orange, but for this look I wanted to get a lot of intensity in my crease, like in the very like deepest part of my crease, and then feather it out and blend it out and get a little bit softer on the outer corner or on the outer edges of my look. And I feel like I really was able to achieve that. Like, I feel like the orange, especially where my crease is deepest, is very bright and pigmented, and I appreciate a shadow that can build and perform like that. Once I liked how the orange looked, this is when I had to shape out my full cut crease. So excuse me while I sit here and hem and haw and move very slowly to try and get a good cut crease. I'm still working on perfecting this, so I wasn't super happy with the final outcome. I should have brought the curve up a little bit higher, but it is what it is. I was trying it, and the only way I can get better is to do it more often. So this is me trying to do a full cut crease once again. Once I liked how the full cut crease looked, I wanted to go into Flip, and I put this on the outer part of that full cut crease. This is another shadow that's very beautiful. It's very pigmented and it has a little bit of like sparkle reflect to it. Not a ton, I will say. It's not like incredibly sparkly and blinding as I would say Razzle Dazzle is, but it's still a very pretty shimmer. It's a very pigmented shimmer that I was really happy with the outcome and how it ended up looking. And it went on really well. Like as you can see, you know, I'm being careful to make sure I don't go over my lines, but overall it's a very pigmented shadow that took no work to apply. And then for the very center of my lid, I'm taking Grin and packing that on the center. Again, like I said before, this is a sheerer shadow, but you can build it up to get it very pigmented. So that's why I'm taking a little bit more time to really pack it on and build it up so that you can tell it's an obvious gold, because I wanted it to look obvious gold. I didn't want just a wash of color. But once I got it packed up, I think it looked beautiful and definitely gave me the look I was going for. And then for my inner corner, I'm taking Snow Cone and I'm packing this on the rest of the eye look and just blending it into the other shadow and taking some time to blend all three of those together and just get a nice seamless blend. Snow Cone is beautiful. Like I said, a little bit more pigmented than Aerialist, so I appreciate it on that aspect. And it's just a beautiful shadow that's very shiny and just has a very shiny finish to it, so I love that about it. Anyway, moving on to my lower lash line, I'm taking a mixture of Firework and Spiral. As you're gonna see, I started with the matte, but then I kind of wanted a little bit, I don't know, it was just missing something, so I ended up using a lot of Spiral on the inner corner. I feel like the two were a little bit interchangeable because I feel like you can't even tell the difference. But anyway, moving on to my inner corner, I am taking just a little bit of Aerialist and packing that on my inner corner. I did wet my brush even though I didn't get it on camera this time. But anyway, that is going to be the final look. This is how it ended up turning out. I love the color combinations. I think it's really fun with the blue and the gold and the orange. As I said, I'm not super happy with the full cut crease, but that's my error, not the palette's error. Overall, I was very happy with it. And besides me like putting it so low that the shimmer was transferring just because my eyes are a little hooded there, besides that kind of transfer that you can already see on camera, it didn't really move anywhere any farther up into my crease. And that's something I do appreciate with Natasha Denona shadows, is they don't travel a lot up into my crease. They don't get into my brow bone and whatnot. So overall, very happy with the wear time.
Okay, so those are the three looks, and per usual, I always love to hear what do you guys think of the three looks, which one was your favorite. Today's look, I love the color combination, but I tried something different because I'm not someone who typically does cut creases, or like a full cut crease, so I tried a full cut crease today, and it's a miss for me because I feel like I didn't do the angle and I didn't go up high enough for my eyes on the upward arch and then coming back down and around. It's okay. It's not my favorite, but it's fine for today. Like I always remind myself that the look didn't turn out perfectly. Tomorrow's a new day. Tomorrow I can do a new eye look and do something I like more. But anyway, I do like the color combination. I thought it was really fun. Anyway, let me know your thoughts down below. But let's go ahead and transition over to my official review, getting into the nitty gritty. And as I go ahead and dive into this, I'm going to just stick up swatches on the screen so you guys can see. As a whole, I think this palette is fantastic. If we're going to ignore the price for a minute, we're going to ignore the over $100 price tag. Let's talk about the quality of the shadows. The mattes are beautiful. I thought they were very, very nice. The only kind of qualm or like issue I have is that almost two of them are very, very fair, and that is Cotton Candy and Funtamime, I think is how it's called. Cotton Candy is definitely a shadow that I had to build and build and build and build and build to get it to really show up on my skin. And I don't think that's the quality of it because it still feels nice. It still, you know, swatches fine, and it still swatches opaquely and pigmentedly, but the shade itself is just such a light shade. Like it is the most pastel, the most lightest type of pink cotton candy shade you can get. And then, you know, the Funtamime, or I think Funtamime, whatever the name is, that one is a little bit better. It's definitely more noticeable, but it's still very fair. And I mean, for me personally, you guys know I like colorful looks, and I appreciate having those in there to blend out the darker shades, but I would have appreciated maybe a little bit more depth, or even with the Cotton Candy one, I don't know, maybe a different shade altogether, to maybe like a light green to blend things out, because you have the pink Joker that you can use lightly to get a light pink to blend out, you know, the purple or whatnot. So Cotton Candy was just that shade that I didn't find myself using much just because it was so sheer, so light, and it just, I don't know, took too much work for me to tell that I had pink in, you know, that I was using that light pink. And then Funtamime, also, it's really nice, but I just wish it was packed a little bit more of a punch when it came to color, because when I used it, even though it was very pigmented, again, I don't think it's the quality of the shadow at all. I definitely think it's just the amount of pigment they were going for in that shadow, and for me, it just hits a little bit low. And as I've already kind of gone over with the tutorial, when I used it in that second look, it was very beautiful when it was close up and you could see that pastel look, but when I filmed a video later that day, I really couldn't see that shade at all in my eyes, or or on in my inner corner and all that. And maybe that's my fault for not taking it farther out, for not packing it on more, but I mean, when I, left my makeup table, when I was finished with my look, I could see it, so I thought it looked great. But on camera, far away, as the day progressed, I kept having to go like, I can't really see it. And then I took pictures like, you can't really see that shade because it's just not that intense. And not that I wanted it like blinding or neon or anything, but just a little bit more. With those two shadows, Cotton Candy and Fun to Me, I just wish it was a little bit more oomph with the color. But honestly, those are the only two mattes that I had any issue with. All the other ones performed beautifully. I didn't notice any kind of patching issues, any kind of weirdness trying to blend things out. I was very pleased that with the darker shadows, it was very easy to blend. It took a little bit more time, but you could take something as dark as Magic and blend it out into a very nice blend that, wasn't too harsh or anything like that. So they're very easy to work with and they're very smooth. I really did like that. Moving on to the shimmers. The shimmers are very pretty. I think there was just maybe two. This purple one here and then this orange one here, Spiral and Act. They were just a little bit underwhelming when comparing with stuff like Grin or Aerialist or Razzle Dazzle that has some sparkle to it. Even Electric, even though it's like very pigmented and you guys saw in the swatches, they look really nice, but when you use it on your eyes, they have this softness to them that just makes them a little bit more undertoned. I think you can see it there. Like the blue is like borderline, it's not that bad, but the purple and the orange are definitely, whenever I use them in the looks, I don't know, I tended to top them, top something else on top of them to get more of a sparkle, to get more impactful of a color on my eyelid. It's just something I noticed. And also too, with that orange shimmer being kind of, just okay, the Spiral, it was kind of confusing to have it in there when you had such a pretty shade like Canon in there. I wish you would have just kind of meshed those two together and got more of a bright orange like this, but with the sparkle of this shade, and I feel like it would have been pretty, because having both of them in there, I tended to just go for Canon over the Spiral. Even though I like the brightness of the Spiral more, it just didn't give me the sparkle and the gorgeousness that I feel like Natasha Denona is known for that Canon gave me. So that's definitely a little bit of a critique there. But I think that's really the only kind of negative I could find with the shimmers. The other shimmers all perform really nicely. Some were a little bit more sheer if you wanted to use them sheer-ishly. But if you use a flat brush, I felt like I got great pigmentation and great color with the shadows, even on just like a tacky base. They definitely do work best with the tacky base, and I tended to use a glitter glue just to keep them on my eyes, because whenever I didn't use a glitter glue, they would transfer a little bit. Now it's nothing extreme, like I've had some transfer like up into my brow bone, like almost into my brows. It was nothing like that, but it was definitely something where, especially with my more hooded eyes, wherever it was kind of touching throughout the day, I would see just a ring of where the shimmer had gone up into the matte area of my crease. So something to note, it definitely was much improved to just a very tiny minimal amount of transfer if I used a glitter glue. Moving past that, I think the only other thing I want to touch on is Acrobat, which is like a cream to powder matte formula. It's beautiful to work with. I just treat it like a matte and it performed like a matte. It was very pigmented, but it has that softness, that creaminess to it that makes it very easy to blend. I think also Fun to Me actually might be that same shadow or that same formula now that I think about it, but the other ones, I think they're all just matte. I mean, all of the mattes have this very creaminess, this very softness and smoothness to them that is beautiful, and definitely I think, attests to the quality of this shadow. So overall, very happy with the palette, but that is kind of like a summary of, what I think about all the shadows, the hits, the misses for me. So the real question is, do I like it? Would I recommend it? And do I regret my purchases at all when I think about this palette? And honestly, I don't know, I'm still torn. Like, I really like this palette, I really love the looks that I got with it, but every time I used it, I would finish a look and then be like, this is beautiful, but if I had the same color story with like Menagerie or Shroud or, I mean, so many, Midas, so many brands that do really great formulas, I would have been just as happy and I would have spent like a fraction of the cost. So for me personally, because I'm not into the luxury makeup and I'm not used to spending so much money on a palette, it really was a negative for me every time I opened this palette to use it. I was just like, man, like it's beautiful, it's great, but like, so many other palettes in my collection, like so many that you guys can see in the background, work just as great for me, and like I'm just as happy with the outcome, and they're just as smooth and they're just as easy to blend. I definitely think that the mattes, with that cream to matte, those are special. I don't think I've ever experienced that with another brand that I loved as much as this. But when we're talking about really beautiful shimmers, like I feel like I get those with like Gimme Glow most especially. JD Glow also has very beautiful, very shimmery, glittery. Nomad Cosmetics, especially their new formula, really does remind me of this type of very pigmented formula but has a lot of glitter. If you're wanting singles, Kristen Lee Cosmetics is one that always comes to mind, is just making such gorgeous, very glittery and shimmery and beautiful, very reflective type of singles. So I just had a hard time like going like, yes, I spent over $100 on this palette and I have no regret. And that's something to keep in mind when you're hearing me give this review, is that it really is a stumbling block when it gets too expensive for a palette for me. I had the same kind of struggle when I got the Made by Mitchell palette, the Feet on the Ground palette. Like, this is a large palette, it's a new brand that started, like, it's a great palette. Like, I didn't have obvious issues. Yes, there were pros and cons, you know, little things in the palette, but overall I liked the palette. However, I spent, I think it was over $80 on this, including shipping, and when you convert it from pounds to dollars, it was around an $80 palette, and every time I opened it I was just like, man, $80 for this? Like, I could have paid like $30 somewhere here in the US, not had to spend the shipping. It would have been a cheaper palette and been happy with it as well. So definitely something to keep in mind when I'm sitting here saying that I just can't justify the price and I don't think it's worth it for me personally with this price. Keep in mind that price really does, I feel like, affect the way I look at a palette and the way I enjoy the palette and the way I like remember a palette in my mind when I think back on palettes that I love. I feel like if I have to spend an arm and a leg to get a palette, it definitely just like goes down a little bit. And you know, also keep in mind, I'm not someone who pans eyeshadow palettes. I'm not someone who will use one palette for a year to get my money's worth out of it. So that, there's like a floaty thingy in my way, sorry. So that's something to keep in mind as well. I don't think the Natasha Denona Circo Loco palette is a bad palette at all. It's definitely not a dud. It's definitely very high quality. It's definitely a beautiful palette. But if you're sitting here waiting to hear me say that it's absolutely worth it and you know, you should go for it, and if you've never spent over $50 on a palette, this is one that you can splurge on and you'll be happy with it. I think you will be happy with it, but at the same time, if you're like me who's always like, can I get this for cheaper? You might not be happy with it, because I feel like there are other brands that do really great formulas that will give you, you know, what this formula gives you for less. That's the hard part. Like, I love all the looks that I created with it, but it's just so expensive. Every time I think about it, I'm just like, oh my goodness, that was so much money. And I hesitate to rave about a palette too much when it was so expensive, because I don't want you guys to think that if you get this palette, it'll be like better than any other palette you've tried, especially if you're in the indie world and you have a lot of indie palettes. I mean, it's a great formula, but it's nothing like earth-shattering, groundbreaking great. So yeah, with that said, I think that's going to do it for this video. I hope this review was helpful for you guys, and I hope, you know, me mentioning all my critiques and all the negatives with this palette doesn't negate how great this palette is. It is a very nice palette. I'm not saying that it's not at all. But yeah, that's going to do it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope it was helpful for you guys. Let me know if you picked this palette up or if you plan to pick it up. And with all that said, follow me over on Instagram if you want to get more daily content from me. I'm LadyKatie92. Hit the thumbs up button on your way out, as it helps me in the whole YouTube algorithm, and I will see you guys very soon in my next video. Bye guys.